Bradley Edwards is a Florida attorney who has represented over 200 victims of Jeffrey Epstein. He is the author of the book published in 2020, Relentless Pursuit: My Fight for the Victims of Jeffrey Epstein. And joining us now is Bradley Edwards. Mr. Edwards, first of all, I'd like your guidance on our coverage of this story with your clients in mind, with their ongoing suffering in mind, and the sensitivity of their feelings, and how, obviously, this involves the President of the United States. This coverage is going to continue. It's going to continue well into September, we now know, at least. Is there a way for us to handle this that is mindful of what your clients have already suffered?
There is a way. It's not the way that it has been handled thus far, and I think that's the problem, and that's why I agreed to come on the show, because I think that back in 2008, when I sued the government over Jeffrey Epstein's illegal non-prosecution agreement that Alex Acosta gave him, it was because the victims were an afterthought. And now it seems like the victims are not a thought at all. Somehow we've gone backwards, which is not okay. It's irresponsible of everyone. And I think that people really need to remember that real people were hurt here, and every single time that the over-politicizing of this issue comes up, they're hurt all over again. I've been contacted by dozens of clients in the last week, probably over 50, that are paranoid, have extreme anxiety and fear over the way in which this issue has been handled, the politicizing of it. And, give it a prime example. The call for the release of grand jury materials. First of all, everybody knows the grand jury materials is basically worthless. It's nothing. That's what you present to the grand jury before an arrest, before an indictment, before the raids, and before the accumulation of evidence. It's a red herring. But it causes the victims to go, wait, where's our voice? We didn't know about this. Luckily, the judicial system works, and the judges immediately said, wait, we're denying your request. Why? You haven't asked for the victims' opinions. So at least the judges see the victims are being left out. I can tell you, despite that order from the judges, we still haven't been contacted. Our clients still haven't been asked about their opinions of the release of materials. Put the grand jury materials aside, the victims generally, and as you said, I've represented over 200 of them. Not every one of them is the same. But for the most part, all of them want to heal, and they deserve to heal. And the only way they're going to heal now is if full transparency happens. Release the files. Release everything in it except the victims' names. Protect the victims. Protect their privacy. Release everything else. There's no other reason to hold anything back than if somebody is trying to hold something where there's a cover-up. There's been enough of that. Release it, and release it fast. There's a solution to every single problem that has come up, and a quick solution. It doesn't seem like people want it. It seems like it's being driven by salivating over scandal as opposed to dissemination of the truth. One of the things being the birthday book. I have numerous clients who know of the authenticity and the existence of the birthday book. Of course, it was a birthday book that was given to Jeffrey Epstein on his 50th birthday by Ghislaine Maxwell. Jeffrey Epstein's dead. He has an estate. Everybody who knows anything about the story knows the estate exists, and it's being governed by the two executors, Darren Indyke, Jeffrey Epstein's former attorney, Richard Kahn, Jeffrey Epstein's former accountant. Those are the two executors. If somebody simply called them on the phone and said, give us the book, they would probably give you the book. They have attorneys. Their attorneys are good. Their attorneys are good people. If they didn't just voluntarily turn over the book out of fear of reprisal, Congress could issue a subpoena to their attorneys at Patterson or at Troutman. Those are the two law firms. I know those attorneys. They would turn the book over immediately. Nobody would have to guess. There wouldn't need to be a lawsuit. There wouldn't have to wait to be discovery. You would immediately have the answers. You could flip to the page. Is there a letter? Is there not a letter? It's over. The victims then get to move on. But that's not what's happening. And that's why I agreed to come on, because so many of them have called and said, somebody needs to remind them. Real people are being hurt here. The truth matters. Transparency actually matters. Get this over with and get it behind us.
I want to go to that book because with your familiarity with evidence against Jeffrey Epstein, which you've collected a lot of through the discovery process, What do you know specifically about that book? Do you know that the estate, the relatives of Jeffrey Epstein, in effect through their lawyers, are in possession of that birthday book?
Yes, I know that the executors of the estate are in possession of that book. And I think that after they turn it over, it should probably be set in the Smithsonian as an artifact at this point in time. It's going to go down in history so that the world can see this book, and they'll know who were Jeffrey Epstein's best friends at the time, what letters did his family write to him, what other pictures are in there, things of that nature. Redact victim names, release the book, and move on. So that's it. Yes, the executors have it.
So you've just identified, not just for the news media, but obviously for House representatives who are now in a mood to subpoena, and also Todd Blanche and the Trump Justice Department, who suddenly are getting curious about investigating this. You've now told them exactly, according to your knowledge, where the birthday book is, who is in possession of that book. And all the House representatives would have to do tomorrow is write up a subpoena for that book, and you believe that it would be the lawyers involved would comply with that subpoena?
I know the executors' lawyers. I've worked with them for years. They're good people. They're good lawyers. They would comply with the subpoena immediately. It's something that we could solve this problem so quickly if people actually want to solve problems. This idea, yeah, go ahead.
Right, one more thing, Bradley. You said, I think you said that some of your clients have specific knowledge of that birthday book.
Sure. Yes, more than one, multiple of them.
And what is that knowledge? They saw it, or they were around him when he was 50 years old? Were they present at his birthday, his 50th birthday?
I don't know the answer to that last question. I do know that they were involved in the assembly of the book, several of them. They were told by Ghislaine to assist in putting the book together. Others have seen the book post birthday and after it was assembled. So the existence of the book is it's an absolute fact. Now, who wrote letters, what's in the book? You're going to have to get the book to figure it out. But this isn't something that needs to be a mystery forever and drag the victims into all kinds of anxiety for nothing. We can get that answer pretty quickly.
I knew you were going to tell us information about the whereabouts of the book. That I knew before we came on tonight. What I did not think of in all the reporting that's been done about this book and what you just said, which now seems obvious when you say it, is that some of Jeffrey Epstein's victims were actually used by Ghislaine Maxwell to assemble that birthday book, to actually put those letters together in that book.
Yeah, you have to remember that Jeffrey Epstein was abusing and exploiting young women and children every day of his life. So anybody that's around for any major event, such as the assembly of his 50th birthday book, they're going to have to be involved in assembling or playing their part, whatever they were directed to do, with respect to that book. So yes, more than one was involved.
And just to that last point, you said every day of his life, the evidence that you acquired through the discovery process in representing your clients indicates to you that Jeffrey Epstein was committing this kind of rape with girls from middle school and high school, as you just put it, every day of his life.
Well, I would just, the only caveat being young children and young women, probably all under the age of 25. But yes, you're right, as young as 14. And I think that we've represented 50 that were under the age of 18. But it wasn't only minors, just that caveat. I think that the one thing that has really alarmed our clients, particularly today, is the information that now Ghislaine Maxwell is being visited in jail, and that she is somehow being given some credibility and a platform on this particular topic. I think what people are forgetting is that Ghislaine Maxwell wasn't only indicted on sex trafficking charges. Ghislaine Maxwell, because of testimony she gave on multiple occasions in the civil cases where we sued her, she provided testimony, and as a consequence of false testimony, she was indicted on 2 perjury counts on this particular topic. So we're going to go and ask somebody to tell the truth who was indicted on perjury charges related to this particular topic. Now, does she have information that could potentially help? Yes. Will she be truthful about it? Who knows? But whoever is going to be the questioner, whoever's going to be the interrogator, must know more than just a rudimentary understanding of the case. You have to have seen her other deposition transcripts to know what she said so that you can keep her in line. You have to know her testimony from her criminal trial to keep her in line, and you have to understand the case. Sending somebody there that knows nothing, she's going to say whatever she wants to say. And what's her incentive? Is her incentive because she's going to get a deal? I have many clients who say, look, President Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell were good friends back then. Is he going to commute her? Is he going to pardon her? And I have said to them, look, I know that you feel like an afterthought right now. I know that you feel like you don't matter. For him to do that would be he thought about you and he decided you do not matter. I don't think that is on the table. I don't think that he would ever do that. Maybe I'm putting too much trust in him. Maybe I am. But either way, if he's not going to do that, what incentive does she have to tell him anything if she's getting nothing out of it? So there's a big problem here with the process, and it's just another piece of the scandal that is causing enormous anxiety. Let's all remember there were 5 victims at the heart of the sex trafficking trial against Ghislaine Maxwell. 2 are no longer with us. Mm-hmm. They're dead. We're losing clients because of the anxiety and the suffering of them and their families. And they should be the first thought that every single American has when they think about this case. They shouldn't be an afterthought, and they shouldn't be forgotten. And that's how it feels to them and to me.
And just for the audience, the 2 that you mentioned, both clients of yours, one took her own life a few months ago, and another died of apparent drug overdose last year. Attorney Bradley Edwards, thank you very much for your invaluable perspective on this tonight and what you've revealed to us about your knowledge about that birthday book and how it can be obtained. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Lawrence. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.